What's up, guys? Coach 420 bringing you another meal of the day. We're going to be doing a little beef tenderloin dinner with some gorgonzola mashed potatoes and a nice little veg medley. This is some beautiful beef tenderloins that we got from a friend of ours who got a quarter of a cow. This is some nice farm-raised, grass-fed beef. So first we're going to start off making our potatoes. So we're going to take those red potatoes, we're going to cut those into quarters, or eighths rather. We're cutting it in half and then in quarters. And then we're going to take our asparagus once our potatoes are done in water. A good way to figure out where to cut them is to bend them from tip to base. Where they snap is usually where that more woody base is, so we get rid of that because we don't want to cook that. Then we're going to dice up some onions. Just doing a little small dice. We'll make sure we're going to season up our beef, so we're going to hit it with a little salt and pepper and just let that sit. Always make sure you get both sides. We've got our potatoes boiling away. We're also going to heat up a large saute pan next to that. In this video we're going to kind of show you how to multitask a little bit more than we do in our other videos, where I just kind of show you one thing at a time. So while our potatoes are cooking, we're going to get our, like I said, nice hot saute pan with a little bit of oil. We're going to start to saute off our mushrooms and get some caramelization on those. Make sure you don't stack them up too high, or else they're just going to start to steam themselves. Mushrooms are like sponges and they will just soak up oil, so we're just going to hit it with just a little bit more so we make sure everything gets coated. Letting everything cook down, letting our mushrooms get their color. Our potatoes are now soft. You can tell by when you squish them, they start to break apart. So we've strained those off. We've returned them to the burner, which is now off. We're just using residual heat to pot dry the potatoes, which means you're trying to use that residual heat to evaporate any leftover water that might be left in your potatoes. We're just letting our butter slowly melt in there. See, we're starting to get some color on our mushrooms. We've added our milk. And we're just going to start to mash our potatoes while we mix in that milk and butter. We're going to add in some gorgonzola. We're just going to mix all of that together. Let that cheese melt in our hot potatoes. Continue to keep cooking down our mushrooms, developing that nice caramelization really bringing out those earthy flavors. Always want to make sure that you keep things moving every so often when you're sauteing. That way you're not burning. The word saute means to jump. We're going to add in those diced onions. We're going to start to sweat those off and start to caramelize those a little bit. There just happens to be some of the onions that I didn't quite get my knife through, it seems, so we're just going to pull those out. Season up our potatoes with a little bit of pepper. And we get a little bit of garlic powder as well. Now we're just going to mix those in, make sure everything's mixed in evenly. Give it a little taste. Adjust if need be. Always taste your food. Adjust seasonings. So I don't feel like there's enough blue cheese, we're going to add in some more. As well as a little bit of salt. Again, this is before we're just mixing that cheese, let that start to melt within our potatoes. Make sure we're keeping our veggies moving. Got our pan getting nice and hot for our steaks. So we're going to hit that up with a little bit of oil. Grab our delicious beef tenderloins. We're going to get a nice sear on both sides. And we will finish cooking these off within the frying pan. A lot of cooking is all about multitasking. That way you can bring everything together at the same time, ready for dinner, so it's all hot and fresh. So potatoes are done and ready. We're just going to set those off to the side while we finish up everything else. We've cut up our asparagus real quick. Again, we had those long stalks, we just cut those twice to make 3 little sections. We're going to sprinkle those into our veggies. And we're just going to saute those off until those are done and tender. Add just a touch more oil. Season these up with a little bit of salt. Make sure everything gets mixed in, everything gets seasoned. Flip over our steaks, we've got a good sear on them. Finish cooking the other side. Grab some frozen corn, we're going to add that into our veggie mix. Now it's just a matter of reheating our corn and bringing our veggies all together. Finish that with a little bit of butter. Check the sear on our other side of the steaks. I'm going to start to try and hit the side a little bit. I like to get a sear on most sides of the steaks where the juices don't just come running out. If you can see, one steak is a little bit thicker than the other one, so these are going to cook at different times, which is always something to take note if you're trying to hit the same temperature on both steaks. Now as I poke it, I'm checking for how done it is. There's a simple trick to do where if you take your thumb and your first finger, your index finger, that little fat muscle just under your thumb into your palm is roughly about how meat feels when it's raw. As you move to your middle finger, your ring finger, and your pinky, that muscle gets tighter and tighter as you flex it, and that is essentially how your steak is when it gets cooked. So the more well done you want, the closer to your pinky you get. That's why you see a lot of chefs over the years, you'll see them touching meat and just poking at it. It's a lot of times how we can figure out how it's done. That we're not always cutting into the steak or something. First one, which was a little bit skinnier, is at about a nice medium rare temperature. We're going to let that rest. There will be a little bit of carryover cooking from residual heat, and you also just want to let those juices settle back down into your steak. This keeps it nice and moist and juicy, and when you cut it, all that blood just doesn't come rushing out onto your cutting board. Finishing off our thicker steak, cooking off our veg. I'm going to try to cook it evenly, so that's why we keep flipping it from one side to another. Want to make sure that we don't burn one side. And then we're going to let that one rest. Now for plating, we're just going to take a couple scoops of our mashed potatoes. We're going to grab some veggies. Just get a nice little pile off to the side. And then we're just going to gently rest our steaks. And there we have a beautiful, delicious beef tenderloin dinner with some gorgonzola mashed potatoes and a lovely veg medley. Hope you guys enjoy it. Try it sometime. See you later.